So today I'm going to talk to you about squats. Squats are a completely essential movement that most, at least in America, most humans just don't really do anymore. If you go to places like India or third world countries, you drive down the street and people are just hanging out in a squat. They can hang out there all day, no problem. And it's a very functional movement that is basically just taken out of our everyday living because we sit in chairs all day. Problem with sitting in chairs all day is it shortens our hamstrings, it tightens our calves, and we're not actually able to get into a proper squat. So the reason this is relevant is because in birthing, essentially a squat can help you out a lot. Women used to birth in the squatting position because gravity can kind of help pull the baby down. You're not fighting against gravity, which you're doing when you're laying down. So incorporating squats into an everyday practice is really important when you're prepping to give birth. So I'm here today to talk about squats. All right, so I'm going to try to do a squat just flat-footed in the most proper way. Now, to do a proper squat, ideally, you want to keep your shins parallel and straight rather than going either super forward. It would be almost impossible to go back. But so you want to keep your shins as straight as possible. And one of the more important things is you don't want to tuck your pelvis. The second you tuck your pelvis, you are not able to hold anything weight bearing. It's just not a stable position. If you're going to relax there for a while, great, but not many of us do that. So if I'm going to squat, I can basically squat properly up until my back is still curved up, and now all of a sudden it starts to round, right? So I can only go about here being in a proper squat position. The second I start to go like that, I'm putting a lot more pressure on my back than I am on my ass and my legs, which is where I want it to be. So there are several different ways you can do it. You can basically just go until the point that you know that your back is starting to arch. You can get a chair and you can basically squat to the chair and then sit back up. Another thing that you also want to notice is which position your knees are facing. Ideally, you want them straight ahead or maybe turned out a little bit. You do not want them to turn in. So keep your knees out and then come back up. Now, one of the things that can help, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but if you're going to squat on a hill, it's a lot easier. And that's because your calves are not as tight. So sometimes what I'll do, here I could just turn this a little bit, is I have one of these half yoga, half foam rollers, and you can just put your heels on it, and now you'll see I'm able to go a lot further down in a proper position than I was before, right? So now I can go, keep going. Now I'm almost at my heels, and that's because my calves are too tight. So I need to work on doing calf stretches, which I definitely need to continue to learn, right? And then all of a sudden here up, that's when it starts to arch. So I can only still go about here, but that's still so much lower than I could go before. So that is the proper way to squat. When you squat, you want to pay attention to your knees. You want to pay attention to your heels. Ideally, you want it all to be in alignment. You want your heels and your knees and then your shoulders ultimately to be over each other. So that's how to squat. I usually try to incorporate about 50, at least 50 in a day. So if you can try to do that, that would be ideal. One of the things that I try to do is I'll set different timers for my work to be like 25-minute intervals. So I'll work for 25 minutes and then I'll spend 5 minutes doing some squats, doing some, different kinds of cardio just to kind of break up the day, get more movement throughout the day, and also be able to get my squats in. There are a couple other great things, great ways to incorporate squats that I'll probably do more of, but for now, that's what I think, and try to incorporate some squats into your day in order to prep your body for birth. So thanks, have a great day.